Hey guys, I'm Nicco Valenzuela. I'm a landscape and architectural photographer, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you haven't, please click the bell button and subscribe. On this video, we're going to talk about some of my favorite landscape photography life hack tools. Now, I'm not going to talk about the usual get a good tripod, get a good camera, get a good lens, whatever. Of course, that's a given. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the tools that I find very helpful and very handy for situations wherein there's a bit of troubleshooting out in the field. So I'm going to talk about 5 tools that I really recommend that you should get. So first is actually the one here on top of my tripod. Now, this isn't the usual quick release clamp that we have on tripods, simply because this one actually has a few features. Of course, I personally prefer the Arca Swiss type clamps. So it's very handy because this is what I use on my L brackets. And I'd rather be using these than the levers to unlock, simply because you don't want to be accidentally unlocking your camera and having it fall off. But another thing about this actually is that it has this other knob which allows for it to turn. So this is actually a panoramic quick release clamp, and this particular one is by Andover. But I'm pretty sure there are a lot of other brands you can find on Amazon or maybe B&H, or if you're in the Philippines, I got this one on Lazada. You'll see more a bit later on why this is very handy, but of course it's going to be for panoramas. Now, the next thing is actually something quite crucial because it helps you do the wide angle panoramas. This was actually relatively cheap, and the build is already quite indestructible, so I think it's actually a very good choice. What this does is actually allows you to extend your camera forwards and backwards. And that doesn't always make sense for everyone, but if you're doing panoramas, you know that this is very helpful. And this is actually kind of a makeshift nodal head for panoramas when you're using ultra wide angle lenses. You know that if you do panoramas on ultra wide angle lenses and you're not rotating on what we call the no parallax point, then there's a probability that your panorama will not be stitched together properly, and that's simply because there's distortion as you're turning. On any wide angle lens, you have to find the no parallax point. Now, the no parallax point is the point in the length of the lens wherein when you turn it and you keep that as your pivot, there isn't going to be any distortion turning around. So for whatever lens you're using, be sure to be able to find that. Now, what we're going to do, or what we usually do, are vertical shots and stitch them together to form horizontal shots. Now, that's where the L bracket comes in. I don't even count that as one of these 5, simply because this is basically a given. So what this does is it mounts like this, and it now allows you to pull back to have the no parallax point on the turning axis of your tripod. If we're shooting panoramas, you simply turn it like this, assuming that this one right here is right where the no parallax point is. So that's a very good alternative to a nodal head. Of course, it's not as precise as a nodal head, but it's definitely more portable than bringing that around. Now, next is actually one of my most favorite things. I know this is something quite usual to many landscape photographers, actually more commonly cityscape photographers. Of course, these things, clamps. were actually first used in studios to hook up whatever lights or modifiers onto poles or ledges or whatever. But if you've been shooting cityscapes, you would know that not a lot of locations allow tripods, which is quite understandable. It might be a security risk, but nonetheless, there are locations wherein they don't allow tripods, but they do allow clamps. So the good thing about clamps is that they can latch onto railings on ledges as long as they fit the mouth of this clamp. And usually I take this out for round railings, and I put this in for square or rectangular ones. So this one comes in handy, and this one is the Manfrotto's 035 Super Clamp, and I have a hex plate right here, which allows me to attach basically any ball head. And sometimes the problem is that if you're latched onto a railing or a ledge, then there might not be enough height. And this is where our fourth tool comes in. For these ones, I of course prefer Manfrotto simply because you're choosing based on the payload, and this one has a 15 kilogram payload, so it can virtually carry any combination that I'd want to mount on it. So our fourth tool is actually a friction arm. Now this friction arm is also by Manfrotto. I wouldn't recommend getting any of the cheaper ones because, again, payload is everything and quality is everything. And if you're using it the way that I'm basically suggesting that you use it, then this one failing is of course going to leave you with a broken camera, or at least a broken lens. So always go for the better brands and the better quality. This one is the Manfrotto 244 Mini. You might need a longer one. There are other options for that too. But for me, I find this perfect. Now, the thread on these tips are actually interchangeable. So you can attach either straight to the bottom of the camera, or you can actually attach a ball head. So that's what I'll do now. I actually find it very, very comforting when all these different tools match together. So there we have the clamp. Imagine that latched onto a railing or a ledge, and you have the arm kind of extending it if you need more height, and you can mount your camera right here. So it's actually a very, very good combination for cityscape photographers, or I don't know, if you're shooting maybe self-portraits in unusual places or whatever. This one is a very good combination to have, but specifically for landscape photographers, this is very, very helpful. And last but not the least, I got this a few weeks ago, and ever since I've been going out to shoot, I've made it a point to always be bringing this. Now this is simply a multi-tool from Smallrig. I'm sure there are many other brands, but Smallrig, I like them very much for their L brackets and camera cages. So I went ahead and got one from them anyway. So there are actually many different variants. But this one has almost everything that I need. This one has the Allen wrenches or the hex screws, the cross type screwdriver, the flat type screwdriver. There are about 4 sizes of the hex screws, and so it's very, very helpful because for most tripods this is what you need. So if ever something is loose and you might need to tighten it, it's right here. If you need to take out the L bracket on this one, although this one already comes with an L type Allen wrench, but it's also very handy to have one of your own. Also for filter holders, a lot of filter holders make use of this size. So it's very handy because sometimes you're gonna need to take out one or two slots if it's causing a vignette on your photos. So there, I hope you picked up a thing or two about the tools that I like bringing around when I'm shooting, and hopefully you pick up one or two of them and make use of them. Let me know if you have any suggestions, any other tools that you'd want to share. Leave them below in the comments and I'll be reading them, I'll be responding to them. But of course, like this video, share it if you found it useful, and subscribe to my channel. So thank you.